Hey, this is Joe Mastriona, better known as Joe M., co-host of Life After Fame podcast, with my best friend, Joe Boglino, better known as Joe B. Yep, we're the two Joes. Thanks for being here today. If you've already subscribed to the show, thank you so much, and a big shout out to our Life After Fame family. We love you guys. If you're here for the first time, make sure you subscribe to the show because today, like in every episode, we're bringing you the most amazing transformational stories of former pro athletes, coaches, musicians, and actors. We share with you where they are now, what they're doing, and the challenges of transitioning and beginning a life outside of the arena and/or stage. Let's do this.
Welcome to Life After Fame podcast. Just imagine 70,000 fans cheering your name when you've scored the winning touchdown. Imagine standing on stage looking out at the crowd, rocking out to that chart-busting song you created. The applause and recognition you received for your masterful acting performance in that latest blockbuster movie. And then, one day, the cheering stops. This podcast is all about catching up with these stars of yesterday to find out where they're at now and who they are as people, beyond the stardom. This is a true human interest podcast about the people we loved to root for. And now, your hosts, Joe Mastriona and Joe Boglino.
Life After Fame's guest this week is a very special one to our podcast. We are joined by former NHL player and Colorado Avalanche shutdown defenseman Adam Foote. Adam was a very accomplished pro hockey player. He won a gold medal in 2002 with the Canadian Olympic team and a World Cup championship in 2004. He also had a very long and successful 19-year NHL career and won 2 Stanley Cup championships with the Colorado Avalanche. In 2013, Foote had his number 52 jersey retired by the Avalanche, joining elite company with big names like Ray Bourque, Patrick Roy, Joe Sakic, and Peter Forsberg in sharing that honor, and was inducted into the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. Foote describes how hard retirement was for him and the transition from pro hockey player to regular life. Adam is better known on Life After Fame podcast as the Origin, and we discuss with him why. We hope you enjoy this episode of Life After Fame podcast with the Origin, Adam Foote. Well, we are joined here today by Adam Foote. Thank you, Adam, for joining us in the seat of Life After Fame.
Oh, thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah, it's
Joe
great
and Joe.
to have you. Yeah, Joe and Joe. Yep, we make it easy or complicated. I'm not sure.
Who's B and who's A is what I want to know.
B is
well,
B is right
he's
here.
B and I'm M. Yeah,
M.
Joe M
Okay.
and Joe
Way
B.
down the
Yep.
You're not claiming A, are you? Okay.
Well, I probably should, but it'll hurt his feelings, Adam, and I don't want to start the show that way. So,
There you
you
go.
know.
I'm
Yeah.
gentle.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You are, and you probably don't know this, a very, very special guest to our show at Life After Fame. Let me explain. Here's why. You are actually the origin and the inspiration of this show. So a year ago, I knew that you're going to be like, oh, what are these guys talking about? A year ago, Adam, Joe and I were at an Avalanche game watching our current team play, and they were playing okay, but defensively at that game, they were getting pushed around a little bit. And I was just sitting there thinking, man, where's Adam Foote when we need him? Because you were one of the toughest guys on the ice. No one, in my opinion, pushed your team around when you were playing. But I had this thought, hey, where's Adam Foote when we need him? And then the next thought came to me, I wonder what Adam's doing these days. You know, he's been retired for a little while, and I wonder what he's doing. And, you know, what's life like for Adam? So I turned to Joe. We had been whiteboarding a lot of different topics on a podcast that we wanted to create. And man, this one felt right. And you were essentially the origin of this podcast. And we thought, you know, let's call it Life After Fame to try to truly understand what players go through when they retire, what their life is like. Is it similar to ours? Is it vastly different? And so we are, like I said, we're just thrilled to have you on because you are truly the origin of this show. So
Well,
wanted to
thank
give you
you.
that
I mean,
backstory.
thank you. Yeah, that's a good story. I mean, well, the Avs aren't getting pushed around as much because they got Manson back there right now,
They
and
they
he is
do,
as tough.
yes.
He seems to be as tough as his father was. He was a scary character. He got his dad got a puck in the throat, and then he talked with that like raspy voice. He could barely talk. Like, I don't know if you guys knew that. And he's like, "Footer, knock it off." And I thought, "Oh God, that guy's scary."
Man, I
You
know
know,
what
I mean, the game's changed too, right? Like,
Sure.
people did go after our guys, and I wasn't the toughest guy on our team. Like, we would always be up for the challenge and play hard, but it was different back then as far as the accountability and the policing. And I still think there's policing in the game. Like, you see Gabe or Manson hold guys accountable, which is great. I think they've got an awesome captain in Gabe because he understands that. I hope they never take it out because I think you'll see more, not just bad injuries, right? Like head and neck and back and things like that. I think it has to stay in. It's not, I think there's more concussions from the bad hit or the elbow or the shoulder to the face or, the hit from behind on the glass rather than a knockout. Yeah, there may be some in the knockout, but it looks scary. And I don't think MMA is helping anything with moms around the world, right? Not wanting their kid to fight, which I get. But I just really hope the game's changed, but I hope they keep it in there because I think it also holds accountability in your locker room too. When you have a leader like Gabe, that is your toughest guy on your team, him and guess what? You fall in line. And I think that still matters we all have egos and it still matters in a locker room to have rank in sports, I think, in a team sport.
I think that's where, I saw you as a player. You basically didn't take any shit from anyone. And that set the tone for the team, though, because you did have the great players like Forsberg and Sakic and Bork and all those. I mean, I could go on, that other players would go after them, especially back in the 90s there. They would go after them, of course. And you were always there to say, no, that ain't happening. Not on my shift. And I love that about you. Where did you get that mentality, Adam, that you were tough as heck? I know you're being modest.
No, it's a great question because when you retire, it takes a while before you reflect back and so what happened? Why did I fall on that place? And, my dad was strict. Like, he watched me in practice. I couldn't cheat. From goal line to goal line, guys would, before the race started, and he'd say to me, "Don't cheat ever." And I would always get, not in trouble, but talked to in the car on the way home if my work ethic wasn't there, right? Work. And I struggled a little bit with it when I retired. I was like, after about 5 years ago, I was kind of mad and pissed off because was I that much of a competitor because I really wanted to do it or I didn't want to disappoint my dad? You know what I mean? And because I was competing every night. And then, part of it is too, it could have just been a competitive nature I had in me. Didn't want to lose. And I think I recognized how am I going to keep my job at a young age in the NHL. And it's like if a new defenseman came in, he got one hit, I wanted two. If he blocked two shots, I wanted to block three. And I'll never forget Phil Esposito and his brother, Tony, the goalie, would say going into training camp, okay, there's a couple of young guys coming in. I'm better than that guy. I'm going to outplay that guy. And you hear from veterans, how do you keep your job? Because there's always new guys coming in and you have to outwork them, outplay. So I think it's a combination of how I was raised. And now that I've been retired for, I think, 11 years now, my father's older. And now I love what he did for me. You know what I mean? At first, you're always upset at your parents. You're like, I don't even know if I want to be a parent in today's world, right? Like, with young kids right now, geez, these kids is, you say something to them, they're almost like 911. You know what I mean? like they just, right. And they think if they show up, they deserve a B at least. It's so sad what's going on. Not all of them, but you can tell, like a Makar watching him last night, how he was raised. He just didn't quit. They were down the game. He didn't quit, and he had guys getting hurt, and he could have easily quit, but he's a leader. And even when I played, like Sakic and Forsberg didn't get pushed out of Philadelphia. And back then, Philly was a hard area to play. Like, it was tough. They were tough. And they were tough last night. They wanted to push the guys out. And Joe led by that, his example of work ethic. And he'd play anywhere. You could be playing in December on the fourth game of a road trip, and it's crummy weather in the East Coast, and you just want to go home. You got spaghetti sauce on your last shirt, right? Your last dress shirt. And you're like, get me home. And the big boys play. that's why I love seeing the Car's effort. But I also, you look at Newhook had a tough start to the season, and he walks around with a little bit of swag. That's good because last night he got an elbow to the face. It was hard, easily could have been concussed or whiplash, and he stays in the game. He recognizes his opportunity on that first power play, and then he gets a puck in the face at net front, but he goes to the dirty areas and scores 2 goals as a smaller guy. So that's very promising for the Avalanche to see. Like, that's what you try to take out of those games in Philly where they're banged up. Who shows up, right? Yeah. But getting back to what you guys asked me, I just didn't. My whole life, my dad would say, you can't lose that battle. You can't lose that battle. You can't. I did not want to lose one battle, and I took it personal. Yeah. So then I recognized in my career, if I didn't feel good in a game, I would go hit a guy just to wake myself up, because then that guy was going to come after me. So now I've got to be sharp. You know what I mean? Right. So it was kind of like, how do I wake myself up? Because you don't have that every night,
Sure.
That's not natural. The war. Yeah. And then Crawford, he was so smart. I'd play more early in a game on the road than at home. And I hated playing at home because when we used to play Vancouver, when Crawford, this will come together for you, but when Crawford was coaching Vancouver at home, he wouldn't play his top line. I was played against the top lines, and, my job was not to let them score. And, usually you have a power forward on the top line, a real fast guy, a real smart guy. They're all skilled. And you just try to figure out what weapon you want to stop first, right? Their A weapon, whatever that is. Right. And if they're going to beat with C or D. But Crawford wouldn't play them early, and couldn't get in the game. And he was so smart, and I knew what he was doing, right? Because when I was on the road, when I was younger, he would play me a lot, because there's games where, he knew I would hit. He knew I would get involved, and then it brings your team into the fight, right? And I didn't even know that till later in my career. You know what I mean? I'm like,
you're like, what is he doing? Yeah, why is
I hated him for it. I go, why do I always play on the road? If the road's crap, can I play at home in front of the fans?
Right.
No, but listen, he had a game plan, right? So I don't know.
It's probably better that he didn't let you know that too, because then it really boiled your blood, right?
Oh, when we were playing bad, he would just give it to me and poke me in the rib, like look at me like this, and I'm like, oh, he pissed me off. You can't. I don't think you can do that nowadays. You know what I mean? Yeah. It'd be bullying or something. And I didn't take it that way. Like, I don't think it was. Crawford and I had a great talk when he left, and we had a phone call, and we were both, we both had it out with each other a few times, but it was all part of it. And it was just the era we were in. I think it was a better era, to be honest with you, in sports. Like, you could be honest. Like, there's no excuses in winning or losing in pro sports. You get paid. Right. You either win or you lose. Right. So, and you see Torts last night for Philly. Or maybe it wasn't last night, but I did see this on an interview, him talking like, man, does this era make mistakes? But they're so skilled. Our era, we were like, we learned how to play tactically, who our opponents were, systems. And then these guys, and I go back to, seeing kids now only play one sport at a certain age and do the extra. They're so much more skilled than, say, a guy like me. There's lots of guys more skilled than me. But they go all in with scoring, and that's America, right? Every rule change in sports is to make more offense, because that's what sells on the Jumbotron, right?
Yeah. Which
I hate. Yeah, but I love soccer because there's so much going on in that game. I was just going to get to soccer and go, what's so sad in our world with this Jumbotron, people don't even see what's actually, not everyone, but there's a lot of people that miss what's actually developing in the game within a game,
Yeah.
But, and that's another thing. I had to play that way too, because I didn't want to lose a job, but I also, there's way more skilled guys. Like, you look at Ozolinch, Borky, Blake, like they have more skill. So
when you look at, so you have 2 sons that are starting out in a professional hockey career, and there's a lot of things I'd like to touch upon there a bit, but how did you raise them differently than maybe your father raised you? And also, I think for all the parents out there, I hate to say it, it's probably true. A lot of parents put their kids into sports in order for them to achieve something big. It could be a scholarship, it could be professional sports, and the chances are 1% of 1% make it. And I think it explains a lot about what happens on the sideline of youth sports with parents going nuts. So what did you do to help cultivate the interest? There may be some pedigree here, sure, but what did you do to cultivate, the growing interest in your sons to achieve what they have achieving now? I mean, they've achieved a very high level of athletics. And what would you tell parents? What's kind of this? Is there a secret sauce to guide their kids through this journey that they have to this type of success in sports?
It's a great question because it was really hard. Like my older son at a young age, very young age, was so competitive. It was almost embarrassing, like to watch him like out there in practice or a game. Like, and I feel like I took a little bit of that out of him early because it was like, what's he doing? And I guess that's that competitive nature thing, I guess, is in the bloodline. But so Tony Granato, we were sitting there at a rink, and his kid was a little bit older at the time playing, and mine was younger. And he goes to me, and I wasn't pushing them. He goes, Foote, are you pushing your kids? And I go, what do you mean? He goes, like, if they're going to play hockey, my kids are older, and they're a little bit upset at me now being older that I didn't give them the reps when they were younger. And he said, just if you're going to have them in hockey, give them the reps in case they want to go for it at a young age. And I kind of looked at, I went, whoa, okay, that makes sense. I took it home and thought about it. It took a while before I even went there with that, a year or two. I was still playing, and, I retired, and my kids, the biggest argument I got in with my boys, actually, I wasn't even arguing. They just went at me hard. It was when I brought them in my office, and there was nothing in my office. They just retired. There was nothing on the office desk. You know what I mean? My wife did all the bills and things like that. And I'm like, guys, you don't have to play hockey. And they went, what? And I go, honestly, I don't want you to think you have to play hockey. My favorite sport is box lacrosse. That's what I love. That's what I was good at growing up. And I said, just go play what you love or do what you love. You're not going to make it in anything unless you love it. And I said, I just want you to know you have to love it because there's a lot of work that goes involved as far as the reps and the practicing, whether you want to play the violin or be a ballerina or be an engineer, be a lawyer. I mean, a doctor. If you want to be the best, then you got to love it. And they were so mad at me. There was actually, I couldn't believe my younger one threw me an F-bomb. I'm like, whoa, like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, where'd that come from? But then, like a year after that, I just said, all right, I decided, okay, they want to do this. And I said, okay, you guys chose hockey. And Mom and I don't care if it's hockey or whatever. But I thought to myself, I got to say this to them. I said, we're fortunate that we can give you some extra practice. And I said, we get it. We can get you in front of the right people to help you. But if you're going to go for this, you have to go for this. And we don't care if you don't make it or fail or you think you fail. We're always going to be proud of you if you have the work ethic and put the reps. I said, whatever you decide to do is for the name Foote. And you're going to work as hard as you can, like in school. I don't care if you get a C, if the teacher says you gave it your all and you're just not good at science.
That's great advice.
Right?
Great
you know
advice.
What I mean? Yeah. But if you get a C and the teacher says you underachieved, we're upset. Sure. Because you gotta go all in. So what you're trying to create is a work ethic, and that's what we tried to do. And when I recognized this, my wife everyone thinks I'm the athlete in the family. Like she was a great athlete. Like she water ski, won in figure skating at 16 years old. She was just a graceful athlete. You know what I mean? I go, we got to give them the reps. And I would say now what they're doing, I wasn't as hard on them as my dad was on me, and they want to be who they are and they don't want to be Adam Foote. They want to be who they are. And there's times where, when I grew up, I didn't suffer. We had, I had a bike, but it was a girl's bike from that my dad bought off the neighbor, you know what I mean? But which was fine, but I didn't want to ride it because the guys were teasing me.
That's right? What made you tough, didn't it? The neighborhood kids were calling you a girl, and
well, they called me a girl once, and the bike never came out. I'd never forget a gold sparkly bike, and I'm like, nah, that's not supposed to have that bar in the middle like this. And then, which I think most kids do. It's like, hey, your gear goes in the furnace room, and that's it. So I look in the furnace room. There's no shelves. There's no nails. So I go get a nail and do all this stuff and hang up my gear. And it actually dried pretty good in there. And when I made it and my kids were there, I felt like part of me, I want them to have more. And I think I slightly hurt them. Like we had a garage that was heated with hockey stalls, like in the NHL rink, and then they're hanging their gear and they had a stick with their name on it. And then I said to my wife, I think we're doing the wrong thing here. You know what I mean?
I think, Adam, I think that all of us parents these days struggle with that. I think you're bringing up a great point because we all want better than what we had. I feel the same way about my kids. I was middle class to lower class. My dad's a, first generation Italian American that came over here on the boat and put the work ethic in us kids. And there were times I resented that, but then I look back as an adult and I really appreciated all he did. But then I'm doing a little bit differently with my kids too. It's a fine balance, and I baby them a little more, and I'm, gosh, am I hurting them? But there
But
were times, Adam.
we are hurting them.
I know.
We are.
But did you ever feel like your dad hurt you, though, and how damn tough he was? Because my dad was the same way. So tough. And it made me feel almost sometimes like, God, he might have been too tough sometimes on me and hurt me that
my sisters,
way.
my sisters, they had some things to say years back. And I said, well, you look at you two. You're awesome. You're great parents, great people. You have good friends. I go, so Dad did great. And it's just hard. It was a different era, what they grew up in, right? But I said to my wife, I said, these two boys we have are more skilled than I was, more talent. And I said, there's a problem. And you guys might like this one. She goes, what's the problem? I go, well, we get our dog groomed and his curls blown out in the driveway in this like stable attached to a car, right? A trailer. You see those where the pooch, the dog, they come in and they're blowing the dog's curls. I'm like, this dog comes out.
Yeah.
This dog's got a better haircut than most people. And my dad would throw a stick in the lake. The dog would come back and squirt baby shampoo on him. He wouldn't even rub it in, throw the stick back in the lake. If my father saw our dog being what happened, I go, every time I see it, I go, oh my God, he would absolutely lose his mind. And he'd go, your kids are going to be soft. And where I'm getting at is with my boys now is like Cal in and out of the line. I'm like, hey, there's guys that like come from nothing all over the world, or they're a farmer and they don't want to go back and farm or whatever. I give them examples and I go, you got to find that within yourself. How bad do you want it? Right. And sometimes I think we wanted our kids to have more because, I don't know. I think everyone probably does it a little bit. And it was a fine line of how do we juggle this and teach them to have accountability and listen, I know I didn't do it perfect. That is for sure, but
none of us do.
It's hard. And I called a couple guys, Al McInnes and Kachuk, guys that have players at that level, sons. Al had a great point. He goes, Footer, it doesn't matter what we do. They just think we're not proud of them because we played at that level. If they don't match that level, right? And it's got to be hard. We don't talk about it a lot with my kids, but I tell them a lot. I'm proud because it's got to be hard. They're finding out. And I think in our world, it doesn't matter if they're playing hockey or they're going out there trying to find a job in their profession. It's hard when we see our kids leave the nest and go out and have to figure this out, right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's parents aren't happy they're as happy as their whatever kid's not happy. If he's happy, then they're happy.
Right. Let me ask you this, Adam. So we'll play with this a little bit because it's dawned on me as well that do you think that your success and the affluence that you got from being successful has hindered then in a way your kids, your boys' mental approach to the game? Let's say that you grew up in Northern Ontario on a farm somewhere with one bedroom and a stall for a bathroom, and you came from those meager means. Do you think that those meager means would have given them a different edge to their desire of achieving success?
Earlier. So 15, now they have it. It's now they're figuring out how to have it consistently every night, which I see they're doing. I agree with you. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I think it happens, right, to all of us. And our parents wanted us to achieve a certain level, and we want ours to go from that level. But you're not going to carry the same mental approach because you're coming from a different level. So it is what it is. I will tell you that your boys are playing and they're pursuing their NHL dreams. And,
for context, for our audience, the Adams' two boys were both drafted in the first round, ironically, by the Tampa Bay Lightning, separated by 2 years, I believe. Cal is playing for Tampa Bay. In fact, he won a Stanley Cup. You guys are one of 15 NHL players to ever do that, father and son, to win a Stanley Cup, which is an awesome achievement. And then Nolan was drafted by Tampa Bay, but is playing now for the Devils. I mean, huge accomplishments. Both drafted in the first round. So you did a lot of things right, Adam. In our opinion.
Well, I just said to them, you guys, if you play one game, all I wanted as a kid was one game, right? Just give me one, because it seems so hard to make it, But I just want to finish. You asked me a question, and we're talking about so much, but it's all coming in the same as with parents. Is it's okay to give the kids the reps, and what I figured out was I did a little bit different than my dad. I'd give them the reps, but I wasn't so skilled, so I went and wanted them to have better skill than me. So we had ice rink in the backyard, and I'd go out and pass them. But when Nolan, he's such a good shooter, and when he would score, all I would do is put my hands, I just put my hands up. Like, I didn't say anything. And it's so funny at this age, he looks at me, and be like, nice goal. But,
That's cool.
and then there's then you have to hold them accountable. You have to have those hard talks and those hard days, not just about for them to make it in sports, but to make it in life out there. Cause it still is pretty vicious out there. Like, it's right. It's competitive in anything. Man. So, but it's a fine line, right? But if parents want to see their kids do something, just they've got to get reps early, so.
And hold them accountable, right? I think that is really critical. I'm not sure that we hold our kids as accountable as maybe our parents held us.
It's hard, right?
It is.
It is hard.
I mean, I'm gonna throw something at you here. So let's go to April 10th of 2011. So
is that my last game?
This was your last game, right? And a lot about, so Joe led off our story about why we started Life After Fame as a curiosity on what former athletes and other professionals are doing. But what we have quickly discovered is the transition from that life to a different life is quite extreme. And, everyone goes through transition, but I almost feel like you guys are representative of the edge of a real major swing. So can you talk to us a little bit about your approach to that day? And had you been planning for a transition, and how was that day? And then how was the day after?
Well, I was hurt. I didn't recognize, I was like, my last 3 years, I'm like, really, I'm this tired. My legs are gone. I can't recover. I'm playing too long. And then when I retired, it was tough. I think most guys, I don't know, some guys might be ready to retire. It was tough because I just missed the locker room, and my wife would go, what's going on here? Like, why are you so upset? Like, and she says to me all the time, and we go to some of the Hockey Hall of Fame stuff. We went with Joe when we hear players talk, and she goes, you have superstars that are in the Hall of Fame, and they still talk about how they could have been better. They could have done more. You know what I mean? I go, you're right. And that's probably why we got there, is because we just were never satisfied. We wanted more, right? I'm sure Gretzky's satisfied, and Ovechkin will be, and Crosby, but all of us trying to, get a goal, we're like, we're never satisfied. But I was like, you played 19 years. What's wrong? I go, well, think about it. I go, lights, camera, action. Competing with the guys, the locker room. There's something about a locker room, right? And the guys, and there's something about that. Going out to battle, and I have to be careful how I say it, because there's actually people out there that still have to go to war, which is sad. That but going to work and battle and try to win a game with teammates it's a great feeling when you can achieve it. And the money and the fame, like we got spoiled. We were divas, like going up, dropping off at the stairs of an airplane. I was on an airplane maybe once my first 12 years of my life. And then we're like first class seats, holy jumping, and it's not I don't think it's a rock star life. Like, those guys are probably at a completely another level, and then all of a sudden it's over, and you're like, okay, where's the guys? Where's my routine? Like, I was lucky. We got to go out and battle every night. And some of the stuff I did, you'd be charged on the street, right? Like, and some of the stuff that happened to me.
Right.
And you go out there, and it's hard to start to explain to people. You have to be very careful how you explain it, because of this war thing I talk about. But because there's actually people that go out there, and unfortunately they die, right? They pass.
Yeah.
But when you can go out there and you figure out how to survive on the ice, and your opponent, it gets nasty, and did it forever. And then you're going to try to live a normal life. Like, I go home and I have a broken nose and stitches and a fat lip, and then you got to
the modern day gladiators,
you act almost
right?
You act almost like an animal on the ice, and then you got to just walk the line and turn it off, and bring your kids in the practice rink, and it's. I don't know. It's so hard to retire. And I think the NHL is getting better. And I think sports is getting better at helping retired players. I mean, we can go on and on about retired players as far as a fourth line player, a fighter, a superstar. I mean, guys, did they put enough money away to live the lifestyle they're used to living, right? Are their heads, the concussion issues are huge. Like, I found out, I think it was 4 years ago, I ignored mine. And we were in that era where get out and play. Go play, you're injured, just go play, fight through it. And then I didn't realize how much it messed up everything in me, my brain, my testosterone, all my levels were messed up. And I got lucky to meet a doctor, and it took me 2.5 years to feel like, I wish I could have played my last 2 years. He goes, I was affected, like my energy levels and recovery levels. And I didn't know, but when you get whacked that much, and there's a lot of players that are still suffering, and we've been sending a bunch to this doctor, and there's another doctor in town too, but there's a lot of hockey players, football players, they don't know. And I think the NHL, as the NHL is getting better, I think the NHL and NHLPA can step it up another level. And I think if you've signed your second contract in the NHL, it's mandatory. It says in there, you have to go to a retreat when you retire, and your wife, psychologists, doctors, blood work, and other retiree like couples. And I believe in it. Like, go talk it out. Here's what's going to happen. And the wife can go, your husband's going to be like so sad, then so mad. And then you retire from something like that. It's an adjustment, right? Sure. I think it's a problem. I wouldn't know, but I'm guessing it's adjustment in anything in life.
Well, guys like Kyle Quincy, as we've talked about, is a big advocate for players after they retire. We had him on Life After Fame, and he talked about his own struggles along with other close friends like Daniel Carcillo, Riley Cote, and some of the work that they're doing. I wanted to ask you, with your particular doctor that you saw, because I know that they were looking into more natural, holistic, type of medicines with functional mushrooms. I know Kyle's had let us know that he's a part of a group and a company for that. Did you look into traditional help?
Well, the thing is,
Adam, or was it natural?
Listen, I'm not an expert on this, and I believe that if you get the proper blood work and scans of the head, and like my doctor may say, yeah, go that route or not. It's not for everyone, right? I think it depends what you have. You can't just say, okay, I got a concussion and this is going to help me. I think you go get what's under the hood, what's wrong, why are the wires crossed, what are we missing here? And I think the blood work and the head scans tell, there's one player that reached out to me because I was telling my agent about it, and he had him, and he left the game, and he called me, and I'm not going to say who it was, but he called me, and I heard him talk, and he asked me where I went, and I knew that he wasn't being honest with me because he was probably embarrassed. And I said, okay, I'll go first. And he goes, what? And I go, I'll go first. Just listen to me. Here's what I did. Here's how it affected me. Here's how it affected my family. And then the guy started to get tearing up a bit. And I go, dude, he goes, yeah, that's what I do. That's what I did. That's what, And I go, guy, go see this guy, get the blood work, get the scans. And I get a call like 6 months later, and he goes, it changed my life. And I go, well, what happened? He goes, it wasn't concussions, what I thought. He goes, I had part of my neck that was messed up. And I'm not going to go into I don't know what it was. Sure. But he goes, he saw there's something wrong with my neck, and I thought it was concussions, and it was making me edgy and affecting my life, affecting how I parented, how I raised my kids, his relationships. And he goes, it's changing my life. And I go, awesome. But that's the whole example of, I agree with what Quincy's doing. He's doing a great thing. But I believe before whatever avenue you go down, I think it could be directed. There's doctors out there that are out of the box that'll go, no, that's not for your injury. Or, that could help, but I'm definitely not an expert at it. But I believe, in our era, it hurt us. It hurt a lot of guys. And before my era, how tough they were and how much of them live after hockey hurt or injured in the head, or the concussions, or the blood work's off, and they never feel good again, as good as they could feel.
This is a running theme with lots of different athletes that we've interviewed from different sports. I think it's a twofold thing, right? What we've identified in this podcast is the transitions are hard. Not only, the transition of playing and having those injuries and the physical health. So that's one fold of this problem. That's crazy with the guy that you had talked about with the neck injury, to just the transition and playing for 19 years or, 5 years, because you guys have done that all your lives, right, Adam? You've been playing probably since you were 5-6 years old, and the transition for it mentally, saying, now what? And like you had mentioned, it went quiet. You've got the crowd, you've got the adrenaline.
Routine, right?
And making that transition is gotta be massively tough. And we want to bring that to our audience, because I think everybody obviously goes through transitions from work, career. We're all making different transitions. And we just want to understand your thoughts on how maybe the NHL, the NFL can do a better job with the players after they retire.
I think it's going to get there. Like you look at Pat LaFontaine went out with head injuries, and he's doing a good job with NHLPA. He's going to more and more guys are jumping on board and being vulnerable. I mean, not everyone wants to admit they're hurting. Right. You know what I mean? Especially the older generation, right? That's not who they are. I think it'll get to where it needs to get to. I think there's a lot of good groups out there that are talking about this. I think it'll clean up. I believe you just have to believe. You have to be positive it'll get there. And you know, there also is another element, and hopefully it gets to one day, as what I was talking about. Like, do a retreat. Like, go for a week with guys that have been retired 10 years and hear the stories. I mean, I remember I'm walking through Whole Foods, first time grocery shopping in years with my wife, and I'm retired. I've got a coffee, and the music in there is like Christmas music, right? So it's not a fast pace for me. And I'm just looking around, and she's getting upset at me. You know what I mean? I mean, hopefully she's getting so mad at me, and she just grabs the buggy, the front of the buggy, and she goes, "We do this fast." I'm like, okay.
You're just enjoying the stroll.
Yeah. And she said the other day, she goes, she was saying to a friend, we were out with a friend, she goes, "Adam used to, like, I'll drive you, because I had nothing to do. I'm driving. I'm like, "Can I come in?" She goes, "No, just stay in the car." I go, "Okay." You know, but there is a transition, but I mean, you know, guys get through it. And I think the alumni, Quincy's doing a great job here with Johnny Lyles, with our alumni. And what I like what they're doing, too, is they're not just taking care of the Avs players in town. They're taking care of players that play with other organizations that maybe met a Colorado girl or they're from here and they're here. So we allow our alumni to be big and help any pro athlete, like hockey player. And I think it really, the guys like it, like the events, going back and getting around each other, telling our stupid stories. You know, Fisher now was big, and you know, it was that big, but it's this big now. But
well,
it's
you know,
fun.
Adam, I think that's important too, man. You got to get with your buddies, and maybe it's a scenario that just says this new generation, maybe they can put their ego down a little bit to be vulnerable enough to say, "Hey, I need some help," and maybe that'll benefit them down the road. I guess we'll have to see, but obviously, you know, older school, you just got to suck it up and get in there. Doesn't matter if you're bleeding to death, you got to go and fight it. And maybe the way we're raising our kids is a little different to understand that maybe there are some limits that you should recognize before you sacrifice your entire physical well-being, right? I wanted to ask you about KO, if we could. I believe this is an agency that you're involved in, and wanted to know about, you know, give us an idea about what your involvement is with KO and what you're trying to do with them. It seems like it's more of a holistic type of agency, boutique hockey agency. And
well, they want to make, I'm not really involved anymore. Like I did a little bit. One time I did, you know, in transition between when I worked for the Avs and I moved to Canada and then coaching, I did a year and a half I had 6 of his NHL defensemen. It was a fun job, like going to watch them play and getting on the phone with them and talking to them. That was great. I loved it. It's a smaller agency getting bigger. It's I don't know if he wants it to get that big. I think because he calls it the boutique and he wants to give, sometimes when you get too big as an agency, you can't give all your clients what they need. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what they're trying to focus on. But it's been a good experience to see that side of it, you know, and then see the coaching side, then see the management side. I was lucky to be around a lot of different situations since I retired. And now I'm trying to see if the TV thing's something I would enjoy and if I can be good at it. And, you know, I talked to Sakic about it and he's like, "Footer, you should do it. You should do it." And I'm like, "Well, all my friends back home say that." I go, "Well, we'll see." It's definitely different. It's hard. It's like, well, what camera's on? Oh my God. And, you know, and it's a learning experience and I'm having a good time doing it, though it's nice to be nervous again. And
I was going to ask you if it's pushed you out of your comfort zone enough. I mean, even though it's about a topic you're good, but it's probably good to kind of push yourself to that edge, right? A little bit. It's familiar feeling.
A little bit of an adrenaline rush.
Right. I went on last night. I was traveling. I got back into town and I had to, you know, trying to study and get information on the two teams, where they're at last night. And then I was getting worked up. And then after I got home, I was like, oh, I was exhausted. You know what I mean? So it was good to feel that tension again. I think when you're a player and you play, if you're fortunate enough to get in those game 7s and, you know, you miss it for some reason. You miss that anxiety and that stress.
How do you do that, Adam? How do you tap into that type of thing again? I mean, maybe that's a big part of the transition. Your game 7 against New Jersey, for example, right? And you want to plug into that feeling again, right?
I don't think I can ever get it. I'm sure Joe got it with I can't even imagine how hard it was on Joe when he made that decision. Like, I'm talking Sakic made that decision, and it was the right decision. In the Cap era, he recognized his young core might not have been what the young core needed to be to win a Stanley Cup, and he decided to go to the basement. And not every GM can go through that and make it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Joe did a good job with the Cronkies of explaining what he was going to do. And they obviously had trust in Joe and gave him the time he needed to go to the basement, get the McKinnons, get those low picks. Right. And then having those years where they were losing and that, like, Joe's competitive, like we all are. And, you know, I remember a comment or two and I'm like, hey, you're doing the right thing. You have to go there to get better. You have to go through. Now you're seeing a lot of teams do it. You look at Anaheim, the new GM who was working with Tampa and then Detroit, Verbeek, he was with Eisman, right? And he knows he's got to go to the bottom. He's got nice pieces with Troy Terry and Zegras.
It's scary, right, to do that, just to blow it up. But you sometimes need.
I'll tell you, it's scary in Philly, isn't it? Like you look at those Philly fans, whatever sport it is. Could you imagine the Flyers going to the basement? The GM would last a year or 2 years. Like,
exactly.
That's when you need your ownership to come out and go, okay, we have a plan. We're going to the basement. It's
this is what we're doing.
I mean,
security detail. Give me a security detail and put some cameras around my house.
I'm sure Joe felt when he won that relief.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Because,
amazing high.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, it was like Joe, when he went into fantasy football, he was good at it. He was always there every year, right? And I remember saying, like, Joe, you're there. He put the work in. He's going to be good at it. Like, he's a smart guy. And you look at that Lehkonen train, like he recognizes that stuff. So I'm sure it's a big relief for him, the career he had, and then he's being judged for his management. But he did the right thing for Colorado, going to the basement and suffering for a few years. But I hope he doesn't take that beating, or it seemed like a beating. It's just human nature, especially in the world we live in, right? Like, people are all over the Avs last night on, Kyle keeps talking about Twitter. I go, don't go on Twitter. Like, it doesn't matter what some of those people say. Like, the Avs are doing awesome for their injuries right now, in my opinion. And it gives these young guys so many more reps. And then it gives the management to see, holy God, this guy's better than we thought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or he's almost
early in
there.
the season still.
One last question to wrap up, and it's a hard-hitting question, Adam. It's not at all, actually. But it was the first question that came in my mind when I was thinking about this podcast and you. And what came into my mind was, what's Adam Foote doing these days? And then for some bizarre reason popped into my head, I wonder if Adam Foote mows his lawn like I do. So do you mow your lawn after you retired, Adam?
Funny.
Do you mow your lawn?
Oh my God.
Shovel
You
your
got
walks?
my wife is going to love you. She gives me, I go, she's like, I go, honey, I can't hang a picture, like I just can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I love taking care of my backyard or my house, like cleaning it. Like, I grew up with two sisters and a mom, and that's my feminine side, I guess. Like, I love my backyard detail. Before I cook a steak, that barbecue is clean. You know what I mean? I got to clean it, get it perfect. Cobwebs, as far as cut my grass, I had to do so much work as a kid that I hate it. My dad made me bale hay and cut his buddy's business lot. It was 3 acres with a push mower. Screw that. You know what I mean? I've been out of that game too long to go, no, I'm not doing it. But, we have a good group that does that for us. But I love detailing things. Like, I had a friend say to me, he came to my cottage once in Canada, and he goes, why do you do this? I go, do what? And then the kids get up, and someone who's got recycling, who's got garbage, who's got sweeping the dock. And I'm just like, you know what? You work so hard for your stuff. Why not take care of it? You got to start that day with a task, and you start that day with a task, and then it's a better day. Yeah, I'll clean up, but I'm not good with the mechanics.
I love mowing my lawn. It's probably why it came into my head. I think it's instant gratification.
That's the question
for me.
I did not think you were going to say.
I know.
Do you cut your grass?
It came into my head, and I, at the time, was sitting at the Avalanche game, and I smirked, laughing, thinking, "Where did that come from, Joe?" But it did. It's like,
my last house I just had, to go a little further. It was a smaller home, and we were in and out a lot. And I said we had fake grass because I'm like, I'm not cutting grass. We're in and out. I go, seeing our kids,
just wash it off.
just spray it. So yeah, my last real job was I was a cultivator. I worked at this garden center where people would walk through a village, like a museum, and there was like, I would have to hedge and do things like this. And the owner would always take me because I was the bigger guy, and I'd work with the owner all day, so I couldn't slack off. He'd grab me, let's go. I'm like, oh God. And I hate cultivating and trimming trees and cutting grass because that was my last real job, you know?
Well, Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. It's been fun. No cutting grass for Adam, but he's made an awesome transition. And, from playing 19 years to the things that you've accomplished outside of your life of wear to Jersey.
We wish you well on your new endeavor.
Well, we'll see if I can pull it off. You know, I might not enjoy it, or they might think I can't do it. So we'll see. And what's fun is to be a rookie again, too. I thought I hated being a rookie, but it's been pretty fun with these guys. Like the mistakes I'm making, my earpiece isn't hooked up. And they're like, another $1 in the jar. So
you know what? 90% of those mistakes that you think you're making, no one else knows.
Well, in hockey, it was so fun, right? Any mistake you made, it was so much fun. You know,
ribbing the guy.
The guy's wearing black jacket all the time, and he wears a red one. He comes on that bus. It's the gauntlet. He just gets abused. You know? So you miss that. You miss that. But it's nice to be back with a team and having that. We're cutting each other up a little bit of fun, a little bit of
absolutely
jabbing.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Adam. You gave us a Wayne World moment, and this is when Garth and they ran into Alice Cooper. But thank you. You know, you did give us the inspiration.
We're not worthy.
And it was really good to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, no problem, guys. I had fun. You guys take care.
Adam Foote, the last active NHL player from the Quebec Nordiques and the godfather of our podcast, Life After Fame. Great to find out what he's up to today and the fact that he no longer mows his lawn. You can catch him on Altitude Sports TV broadcasts of Colorado Avalanche games this year. We wish him well in his new broadcasting endeavor. You can see more of his current profile on our website, lifeafterfamenow.com. Thanks for listening and watching our show. We hope it was time well spent. Life After Fame is a show about life and the transitions of people who've achieved extraordinary professional success. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit subscribe to find out about previous episodes and when we drop a new interview. Please visit us at lifeafterfamenow.com or by subscribing anywhere podcasts are found. Join us next week as we will have another famous guest tell their story of how they made the transition from the big spotlight to their life after fame. On behalf of this episode's guest, former NHL defenseman Adam Foote, I'm Joe B. with my co-host Joe M. We know transitions can be tough. We hope our interviews give you a blueprint for making that change in your own life. We'll talk to you next time.